thank you for being here, for taking the time to listen to my story. Sharing this has been one of the hardest things I have ever done, but it also helps me feel heard, helps me know that I am not alone in what I went through. If this story touches you, if it resonates in any way, please subscribe. It means the world to me. Now, let me tell you about the night my husband brought his mistress home and asked me to cook for her, and why I smiled. My name is Claire. I was 38 years old when this happened. I had been married to Daniel for 15 years. We had 2 children, Emma, who was 12, and Noah, who was 9. We lived in a suburban neighborhood in a modest 2-story house with a front yard that needed weeding and a back deck that Daniel had always promised to repair, but never did. I was a high school English teacher, a job I loved despite the long hours and the ever-growing stack of essays to grade. Daniel was a sales manager for a mid-sized company that sold industrial equipment. He traveled often for work, sometimes gone for days at a time, and I had grown used to managing the house and the kids on my own. Our marriage had not been perfect, but whose marriage is? We had gone through the usual struggles, financial stress when the kids were young, disagreements about parenting, the slow erosion of romance that happens when you are too tired and too busy to remember why you fell in love in the first place. But I had always believed that we were solid, that we were a team, that we would weather any storm together. I was wrong. It was a Friday evening in late September. The air was crisp, the leaves just beginning to turn, and the sky was that deep, endless blue that only happens in autumn. I had just finished preparing dinner. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans, a simple meal, but one that I knew the kids would eat without complaining. Emma was upstairs doing homework, and Noah was in the living room playing a video game. I was in the kitchen, setting the table, when I heard Daniel's car pull into the driveway. He was home earlier than usual. He had been on a business trip for the past 4 days, and I was not expecting him back until late. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and went to the front door. I opened it just as he was walking up the steps. He was carrying his overnight bag, and behind him was a woman. She was young, maybe late 20s, with glossy, dark hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail. She wore a fitted blazer and jeans, expensive-looking, stylish. She was beautiful in that effortless way that some women are, the kind of beauty that made me suddenly aware of my faded yoga pants and the old t-shirt I was wearing. Daniel smiled at me. It was not his usual smile, the tired, distracted smile he gave me most days. It was bright, almost manic, as if he were daring me to react. He said, "Claire, this is Jessica. Jessica, this is my wife, Claire." Jessica extended her hand. She said, "Hi, Claire. It is so nice to finally meet you. Daniel has told me so much about you." I shook her hand. Her grip was firm, confident. I said, "Nice to meet you." My voice sounded calm, even to my own ears, but inside my mind was racing. Who was this woman? Why had Daniel brought her home? What was happening? Daniel walked past me into the house, setting his bag down in the entryway. He said, "Jessica is in town for the weekend, and I thought it would be nice if she joined us for dinner. You do not mind, do you?" I looked at him. His eyes were challenging me, daring me to make a scene. The kids were home. Emma and Noah were just a room away. I thought about the roast chicken in the oven, about the table I had just finished setting, about the normal, ordinary evening I had been planning. And then I thought about the look on Daniel's face, the way he was standing too close to this woman, the way her perfume filled the entryway, expensive and cloying. I smiled. It was not a real smile, but it was convincing enough. I said, "Of course not. Dinner is almost ready. Come on in." Jessica walked into the house, looking around with bright, curious eyes. She said, "What a lovely home. So cozy." The way she said cozy made it sound like a euphemism for small, for shabby, for not quite good enough. I felt a flash of anger, hot and sharp, but I pushed it down. I said, "Thank you. Let me get you something to drink. Wine? Water?" Jessica said, "Wine would be great." I went into the kitchen. My hands were shaking as I pulled a bottle of white wine from the refrigerator. I poured 2 glasses, one for her and one for me, and then I drank half of mine in one long swallow. I heard Daniel in the living room, talking to Noah, his voice loud and jovial. I heard Jessica's laugh, light and musical. I set down my glass and gripped the edge of the counter. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the wine bottle against the wall and watch it shatter. I wanted to grab Daniel by the collar and demand to know what the hell he thought he was doing. But I did not. I took a deep breath, picked up the glasses, and walked back into the living room. Jessica was sitting on the couch, and Daniel was standing beside her, his hand resting casually on the back of the couch close to her shoulder. Noah was showing her something on his tablet, and she was nodding, smiling, acting as if this were the most natural thing in the world. I handed her the wine, and she took it with a grateful smile. She said, "Thank you so much. You are so sweet." I called Emma down for dinner. She came into the dining room, her eyes wary, immediately sensing that something was off. She looked at Jessica, then at me, then at Daniel. She said, "Who is this?" Daniel said, "This is Jessica. She works with me. She is in town for the weekend, so I invited her to join us for dinner." Emma said, "Oh." She sat down at the table, her expression guarded. Noah came bounding in, oblivious, chattering about his video game. I brought the food to the table, setting the dishes down carefully, my movements precise and controlled. We all sat down. Daniel said grace, something he never did, his voice smooth and practiced. And then we ate. The meal was excruciating. Jessica talked constantly, filling the silence with stories about her job, about her travels, about her life in the city. She was charming. I had to give her that. She asked Emma about school, asked Noah about his favorite games, asked me about my teaching. She was polite, engaging, perfect. And the whole time, I could feel Daniel watching me, waiting for me to break, to lose control, to give him an excuse to paint me as the unreasonable one. I did not break. I smiled. I nodded. I answered her questions. I passed the potatoes. I refilled her wine glass. I played the role of the gracious hostess, the devoted wife, the woman who had everything under control. Inside, I was screaming. Inside, I was breaking into 1,000 pieces, but outside, I was calm. After dinner, Jessica offered to help with the dishes. I said, No, you are a guest. Please relax." She insisted, and we ended up in the kitchen together, loading the dishwasher. She said, "You have such a beautiful family, Claire. You are so lucky." I said, "Thank you." She said, "Daniel talks about you all the time. He clearly adores you." I looked at her. Her expression was sincere, or at least it appeared to be. I said, "That is nice to hear." She said, "I hope you do not mind me being here. I know it is a little unusual, but Daniel thought it would be good for me to see what a real family looks like. I have been working so hard, traveling so much, and I forget sometimes that there is more to life than just work." I said, "I do not mind at all." The lie tasted bitter on my tongue. She smiled. She said, "You are so kind. I can see why Daniel loves you." I wanted to laugh. I wanted to cry. I wanted to grab her by the shoulders and shake her and tell her that she was sleeping with my husband, that she was destroying my family, that she was not welcome in my home. But I did not. I just finished loading the dishwasher and wiped down the counters. I said, "I am glad you could join us." Jessica left around 9. Daniel walked her to her car. I watched from the window as they stood by the driver's side door, talking. He touched her arm, and she laughed. He leaned in close, and for a moment, I thought he was going to kiss her, but he did not. She got into her car and drove away, and Daniel stood there for a moment, watching her go. Then he turned and walked back to the house. He came into the kitchen where I was finishing up. He said, "That went well, I think." I did not look at him. I said, "What was that, Daniel?" He said, "What was what?" I said, "Why did you bring her here? Why did you bring your mistress into our home and expect me to cook for her?" He laughed. It was a cold, dismissive sound. He said, "Mistress? Claire, you are being paranoid. Jessica is a colleague, a friend. There is nothing going on." I turned to face him. I said, "Do not lie to me. I am not an idiot. I saw the way you looked at her. I saw the way she looked at you. I know exactly what is going on." He said, "You are imagining things. You have been stressed lately, with work and the kids. Maybe you should see someone, talk to a therapist." I felt a wave of nausea, gaslighting. That is what this was. He was trying to make me doubt my own perceptions, my own sanity. I said, "I know what I saw." He said, "You saw a colleague joining us for dinner. That is all. If you cannot handle that, if you are going to be jealous and suspicious, then maybe that is something you need to work on." I stared at him. I did not recognize the man standing in front of me. This was not the man I had married, the man who had held my hand during labor, who had coached Emma's soccer team, who had danced with me in the kitchen to old songs on the radio. This was a stranger, a cruel stranger who was looking at me with contempt. I said, "Get out." He said, "What?" I said, "Get out of this kitchen. Go upstairs, go to bed. I do not care. Just get away from me." He shrugged. He said, "Fine. I am tired anyway." And he walked out, leaving me standing there, shaking with rage and disbelief. I did not sleep that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to Daniel snore beside me. My mind was a storm of thoughts and fears and questions. How long had this been going on? Had there been others? What did this mean for our marriage, for our family? I thought about Emma and Noah, asleep in their rooms, unaware that their world was crumbling. I thought about the house, the mortgage, the bills, the life we had built together. I thought about everything I stood to lose. In the morning, I got up early. I made breakfast for the kids, got them ready for their weekend activities. Daniel slept in. When he finally came downstairs, I was alone in the kitchen. He poured himself a cup of coffee and sat down at the table. He said, "About last night, I think you overreacted." I said, "I do not want to talk about it right now." He said, "We need to talk about it. You cannot just accuse me of things and then refuse to discuss it." I said, "Fine, let us talk. Are you having an affair with Jessica?" He said, "No." I said, "Are you lying to me?" He said, "No." I said, "Then why did you bring her here? Why did you parade her in front of me and the kids like she was part of the family?" He said, "I told you, she is a friend. I wanted her to meet my family. I did not think it would be a big deal." I said, "It is a big deal, Daniel. You do not just bring a female colleague home for dinner without talking to your wife first. You do not act like it is completely normal to have another woman sitting at our table drinking our wine, charming our children." He said, "You are being irrational." I said, "And you are being a liar." He stood up. He said, "I am not doing this. I am not going to sit here and be accused of something I did not do. Believe what you want, Claire. I cannot control that." And he walked out of the house, slamming the door behind him. I sat there, alone, feeling the walls close in around me. I knew he was lying. I knew it with every fiber of my being. But knowing it and proving it were two different things. I had no evidence, no concrete proof. Just a gut feeling. A woman's intuition, the kind of thing that was easy to dismiss and mock. Over the next few weeks, things got worse. Daniel became more distant, more hostile. He started coming home even later, sometimes not until after midnight. He stopped eating dinner with us, stopped helping with the kids' homework, stopped pretending to care. He was physically present but emotionally absent, a ghost haunting our home. I tried to hold things together. I got the kids to school, graded papers, cooked meals, cleaned the house. I smiled when I was supposed to smile, laughed when I was supposed to laugh. But inside, I was dying. I started looking for proof. I checked his phone when he was in the shower, but he had put a password on it. I checked his email, but he had changed the password. I checked his credit card statements, and there were charges for expensive dinners, hotel rooms, jewelry. All of it could be explained away as business expenses. But I knew better. I confronted him about the charges, and he told me I was being paranoid, that I was invading his privacy, that I needed to trust him. He turned it around on me, made me feel like I was the one doing something wrong. I felt like I was losing my mind. I could not eat, could not sleep. I lost weight. My hair started falling out. I snapped at the kids, at my students, at everyone. I was unraveling, and Daniel watched it happen with cold indifference. He did not care. He had already checked out of the marriage, and he was just waiting for me to either accept it or destroy myself trying to fight it. One evening, about a month after Jessica's visit, I was in the bedroom folding laundry when Daniel came in. He sat down on the bed and said, "We need to talk." I said, "About what?" He said, "About us, about this marriage. Claire, I am not happy. I have not been happy for a long time. I think we need to consider separating." I stopped folding. I looked at him. He was looking at the floor, not at me. I said, "Is this about Jessica?" He said, "This is about us. We have grown apart. We want different things. I think it is time we admit that and move on." I said, "You are having an affair." He said, "I am not having this argument again. Believe what you want. The point is, I want out. I want a divorce." I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. Even though I had seen it coming, even though I had known on some level that this was where we were headed, hearing him say the words out loud was devastating. I said, "What about Emma and Noah?" He said, "They will adjust. Kids are resilient. We will share custody, work out a schedule. It will be fine." I said, "It will not be fine. You are tearing this family apart." He said, "No, Claire. You are tearing this family apart with your suspicions and your jealousy. I cannot live like this anymore." I wanted to scream. I wanted to hit him. I wanted to make him feel even a fraction of the pain he was causing me. But I did not. I just stood there, clutching a t-shirt, tears streaming down my face. I said, "Fine. If that is what you want, fine." He said, "I will move out this weekend. I will get an apartment. We can figure out the details later." And that was it. He got up and walked out, leaving me standing there with a pile of unfolded laundry and a heart that felt like it had been shredded into pieces. He moved out that weekend, just like he said. He packed his clothes, his books, his things, and he left. Emma cried. Noah did not understand. I tried to explain, tried to make it sound like it was not as bad as it was, like we would all be okay. But I did not believe it, and I do not think they did either. The next few months were the hardest of my life. Daniel filed for divorce. He hired a lawyer, a good one, and he fought for everything. He wanted the house, the savings, custody of the kids. He painted me as unstable, as paranoid, as someone who could not be trusted to care for the children. He used my weight loss, my exhaustion, my emotional breakdowns against me. He made it seem like I was the problem, like I was the reason the marriage had failed. I hired a lawyer too, but I could not afford anyone as good as his. I was drowning in legal fees, in bills, in the day-to-day expenses of running a household on a single teacher's salary. I had to take on extra tutoring jobs just to make ends meet. I was working all the time, exhausted all the time, barely holding it together. Emma started acting out at school, getting into fights, her grades slipping. Noah became withdrawn, quiet, spending hours in his room alone. I felt like I was failing them, failing at everything. I saw Daniel occasionally, at custody exchanges, at school events. He looked good. He looked happy. I heard through the grapevine that he and Jessica were officially together, that they were living together in his new apartment. I heard that she had quit her job, that he was supporting her, that they were planning a future together. It made me sick, but there was nothing I could do. I had no power, no control, no way to stop the train wreck that was my life. I hit rock bottom on a cold night in January. The kids were with Daniel for the weekend, and I was alone in the house. I had spent the day cleaning, trying to keep busy, trying not to think. But as the sun set and the shadows grew long, the loneliness became unbearable. I sat on the couch in the dark, staring at the wall, and I felt like I was disappearing, like I was fading away, becoming less and less real until eventually I would just cease to exist. I thought about giving up. I thought about how easy it would be to just let go, to stop fighting, to let Daniel and his lawyer and his perfect new life with Jessica just take everything. I thought about how much easier it would be if I were not here, if I were not a burden to my children, not a failure as a wife, not a disappointment to everyone who had ever believed in me. I sat there in the dark, and I cried until I had no tears left. And then my phone rang. I almost did not answer it. I looked at the screen, and it was a number I did not recognize. But something made me pick up. A voice on the other end said, "Is this Claire Mitchell?" I said, "Yes." The voice said, "My name is Angela Reyes. I am a private investigator. I have been hired to look into your husband, Daniel Mitchell, regarding some financial irregularities at his company. I understand you are going through a divorce, and I think we should talk." I sat up. I said, "What kind of financial irregularities?" She said, "I would rather discuss this in person. Can we meet tomorrow?" I said, "Yes, absolutely." We met the next day at a small cafe downtown. Angela Reyes was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s, with sharp eyes and a firm handshake. She laid out a folder of documents on the table between us. She said, "Your husband has been embezzling money from his company. Small amounts at first, but over the past 2 years, he has taken over $300,000. He has been using it to fund his lifestyle, including his relationship with Jessica." I stared at the documents. Bank statements, transfer records, emails. It was all there, laid out in black and white. I said, "Why are you telling me this?" She said, "Because the company is pressing charges, and because I think you deserve to know what kind of man you are dealing with. If he has been stealing from his employer, chances are he has been hiding assets from you during the divorce proceedings. You need to tell your lawyer about this." I said, "Will this help me in the divorce?" She said, "It should. Financial fraud is serious. It will not look good for him, especially if he is trying to paint you as the unstable one." I took the folder. I said, "Thank you." She said, "You are welcome. And Claire, do not let him win. You deserve better than this." I took the information to my lawyer. She was thrilled. She said it changed everything, that we could use this to renegotiate the terms of the divorce, to ensure that I got a fair settlement, and that Daniel did not walk away with everything. She filed motions, brought the evidence to court, and suddenly the tables turned. Daniel was furious. He tried to deny everything, tried to claim the evidence was fabricated, but it was too solid. The company fired him. The police launched an investigation. His new life, his perfect life with Jessica, started to crumble. Jessica left him when the money dried up. She moved back to the city, and I heard through the grapevine that she was already dating someone else, someone wealthier, someone who could give her the lifestyle she wanted. The divorce was finalized 6 months later. I got the house, I got primary custody of the kids, and I got a significant portion of the remaining assets. Daniel was ordered to pay child support, though given his legal troubles, I did not expect to see much of it. But that was okay. I did not need his money. I just needed him out of my life. The years that followed were slow and difficult, but they were also healing. I focused on my children, on rebuilding our lives, on creating a sense of normalcy and stability. Emma gradually came out of her shell, her grades improved, and she started smiling again. Noah became more talkative, more engaged, more like the happy kid he used to be. We had family dinners, we watched movies together, we took small trips on the weekends, we healed together. I threw myself into my teaching, into my writing. I started a blog where I wrote about my experiences, about surviving betrayal, about rebuilding after loss. It resonated with people. I received messages from women all over the country, thanking me, telling me their own stories, asking for advice. I realized that I was not alone, that there were thousands of women out there who had been through the same thing, who had been gaslighted and betrayed and discarded, and who had found a way to survive. I started a support group at the local community center. It was small at first, just a handful of women meeting once a week to talk, to share, to support each other. But it grew. Within a year, we had 50 members. Within 2 years, we had over 100. We became a community, a sisterhood, a network of women who refused to be defeated by the men who had tried to destroy them. I saw Daniel one more time, about 5 years after the divorce. I was at a grocery store with Emma, and he was in the checkout line ahead of us. He looked older, worn down. He was alone. He turned and saw me, and for a moment, our eyes met. He opened his mouth as if to say something, but then he closed it again. He paid for his groceries and left without a word. Emma said, "Was that Dad?" I said, "Yes." She said, "He looked sad." I said, "Maybe he is." She said, "Do you feel bad for him?" I thought about it. I thought about everything he had put me through, the pain, the humiliation, the nights I had spent crying on the bathroom floor. I thought about the way he had brought Jessica into our home, had asked me to cook for her, had smiled while he destroyed me. I thought about the years it had taken to rebuild, to heal, to find myself again. And I said, "No, I do not feel bad for him. He made his choices, and he has to live with them, just like I made mine." Emma nodded. She said, "I am glad we are okay, Mom." I said, "Me too, sweetheart. Me too." We finished our shopping and went home. That night, I made dinner for the kids, and we ate together at the table, laughing and talking about our day. Noah told a joke he had heard at school, and Emma rolled her eyes but smiled. I looked at them, at their faces, at the life we had built from the ruins of the old one, and I felt something I had not felt in a long time. I felt happy. The night Daniel brought Jessica home, the night he asked me to cook for her, I had smiled. At the time, it was a mask, a defense mechanism, a way to survive the moment without falling apart. But looking back now, I realized that smile was the beginning of something. It was the moment I decided that I would not let him break me, that I would not give him the satisfaction of seeing me destroyed. It was the moment I chose to survive, to fight, to reclaim my life. That smile was not for him. It was not for Jessica. It was for me. It was a promise I made to myself that no matter what happened, I would find a way to keep going. And I did. Years later, I am sitting on the back deck that Daniel never repaired. I fixed it myself with Emma's help one summer afternoon. The sun is setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Noah is inside, practicing his guitar. Emma is away at college studying to be a lawyer. She calls me every Sunday. My support group is thriving, and I am working on a book, a memoir about survival and resilience and the strength it takes to rebuild your life after it has been torn apart. I think about that night sometimes. I think about the flowers Daniel brought to the hospital, the ones that were not for me. I think about Jessica sitting at my table, drinking my wine, smiling her perfect smile. I think about the moment Daniel asked me to cook for her and the smile I gave him in return. That smile saved me. It was the first step on a long journey, a journey that led me here, to this moment, to this life that is mine and no one else's. I am not bitter. I am not broken. I am whole. I am free. And I am happy. And if I saw Daniel again today, if he walked up to me and tried to explain or apologize or justify what he did, I would smile again. Not out of politeness, not out of fear, but out of the quiet, unshakable knowledge that I survived him, that I am stronger than he ever was, and that I built something beautiful from the ashes of what he tried to destroy. That smile would be real this time, and it would be mine.